Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod as we review Ireland's last test in the autumn, a tight win against Australia, and we look at the autumn as a whole. Matt Williams and Alan Quinlan alongside me for the last time this calendar year. Alan, firstly to you, a win in the end, 3 out of 4, 13-5 down. So in the end, they actually did all right to come out on top. What did you make of the performance from Ireland?
I think everyone was hoping from an Irish point of view that they'd have a really positive win and that there'd be a bit of spark to the performance and all that. But look, maybe we didn't probably realise how much quality Australia would bring and how much fight and determination. I'd say, when I say didn't realise, of course we realised they were going to bring fight and they were going to bring a real passion and try and finish their tour on a high. But I just think, I think in an ideal world, we were all hoping for a slick Irish performance, and it was just a bit flat at times. And that's probably the reason why, you have groans in the crowd and you have a little bit of that energy being taken out of the game is when you only get to 2 or 3 phases or 4 phases, and then there's a knock on or a turnover and stuff like that. So excitement builds with phases and line breaks and big tackles and all that kind of stuff. So I just think maybe they showed a lot of character in the end, which is great to see. The fundamentals of what you want, passion and character and all that kind of stuff. From a skills point of view, it has been a poor November. The handling errors throughout November have been too high. I'm sure they'll critique themselves. They found a way to win 3 games out of 4. I think the problem was the seed was probably set with the New Zealand performance, and they just started off really kind of chasing their tails a little bit with that disappointing loss. It kind of restricted room for change around Fiji. There was probably a nervousness there about the danger Fiji possibly could possess and what they're capable of. That didn't transpire. They were very poor, Fiji, but Ireland put out probably a stronger team that they would have wanted pre-November. The second half against Argentina, maybe that kind of was similar feel to the second half against New Zealand. So expectations are high, I think, and I think they have high expectations of themselves. So I would imagine that when Andy Farrell and the rest of his coaches, who've done a brilliant job in the last number of years, when they look at the stats and the numbers, they'll be disappointed and they'll try and tweak things a little bit and be much better for the Six Nations. But 3 out of 4 wins is what's important. I think the performances weren't what we would have wanted, to say the least, and that kind of was the case against Australia. You said it, Stuart, when you're 13-5 down, you're playing against an opponent who is well fired up, and they look like they're finding their flow. Their confidence is high, and they sense it. Australia sensed that, and I think it was down to Ireland not having sustained pressure and wearing Australia down. We never wore them down at any stage over long periods, and so they were right in the game. And obviously they're leading with 10 minutes to go, and Ireland, they miss an opportunity for a try when Gus McCarthy's held up over the line, and then they get a second chance, which doesn't always come. Matt will know that as a coach. When that one chance, when you're in the 70th into the last couple of minutes of a game and you get a chance 5 meters out, you don't score, you kind of go, well, this isn't our day. But they got a second chance, and they got over the line in the end. So really pleasing win. And I think Joe Schmidt and the rest of his coaches will be really pleased, frustrated a little bit that they didn't get the job done, but Australia were really good, and they unsettled Ireland.
Matt, this Irish attack hasn't looked as slick since South Africa, the last 4 weeks. They've sort of struggled. Is that just, the stats aren't great with the handling errors? There was 28. I think that's a wee bit of lack of belief or confidence, but also people's defence. Are they starting to work them out? Australia sort of let them soak and just come up slowly, if that's right, and then just sort of made the tackles, and that was enough. It made Ireland look sometimes not as if it was clicking too well.
Both, I think, Stu. The first rule of tactics, I think we said the other week, is don't beat yourself. and if you have a very high penalty count, or you're giving away a very high penalty count, high error rate, poor Finlay Bealham, he's born in Canberra, dropped the ball twice in the first 10. I can guarantee that you're not going to believe this, but Australians don't mind a bit of a chat on the field. And I know there was a few words going to Finlay, poor bloke, I was feeling for him. But, Bundy Aki against New Zealand, I've never seen Bundy make so many handling errors in his time in a green jersey. And it just kept going on and on the whole game. Our line-out didn't function. And when we look back over that series, how many tries, or so many tries, came from winning the line out 5-10 metres out from their opponent's try line. And beautifully worked tries, beautifully conducted tries. And they scored 2 on against Australia on Saturday. But the percentage of the line out has dropped significantly. When Paul O'Connell first came in, it was absolutely flawless, but batting at 100%. Now, you can't do that forever. But they were losing some really poor lineouts, as in people missed lifts the other day. They went to the front too many times. They won the line out, and then at the very first tackle, Doris got stripped by Fraser McWright. I thought Fraser McWright had a magnificent game. So that's Ireland beating themselves. Then, Stu, I think we're going to see this defensive system against Ireland. I've actually been, I'm not trying to say I'm smarting in the background, I've been saying this for a while. Ireland like a rushing defence that South Africa put on them. What does that mean? That's a disconnected defence. And when you're playing a short passing game, that sort of rushing defence provides you with spaces. That's one of the factors why Ireland have beaten South Africa so often. Australia held their connectivity of the line. They came forward, but they weren't sprinting like South Africa. And they empowered one defender every now and then to come out of line and tackle the guy behind. We used to call it a shooter. Now, this is like a defensive system you would have seen 2002, 2001. It was a very solid line. They slid, so they brought their sideline into play. Whenever Ireland went wide, the Australian centres just slowed down, put them on their outside shoulder and pushed them towards the sideline and made their tackles. It was a highly effective defence from Australia. And I think we're going to see it again. From an Australian point of view, I was very frustrated with their attack. I kept telling everyone, and we were talking here on the pod, about Suwali. Like, he hardly touched the ball. And I think it was exemplified in the last play of the game. Australia got a scrum, and we just gave it a 12 to Ikitau at 12, and he hit it up. All Suwali did all game was clear people out. Like, he was a racehorse, a sprinter, a thoroughbred, and we're treating him like a draft horse, ploughing the field. Like, why did we not get the ball in Suwali's hand? Why was there not more play? Australia had that break when Tupou made the break, the big prop. All he had to do was hold the ball if he couldn't make the pass. But to throw the ball away like they did, the game was there for Australia to win, but they were very poor, I felt, in attack for that second half. Defensively brilliant. Ireland overall, 3 out of 4. You've got to give it to them. England, 1 out of 4. I know where I'd rather be. But either way, I think the summation at the end is this Irish team is not playing anywhere near where they were a year ago. Certainly not where they were in the World Cup, not where they were for most of the Six Nations last year or the second test. It was a highly inaccurate performance from them over 4 games. I don't think if they don't lift that performance, that's not going to hold the cup, the Six Nations trophy come January, February, March. The opposition won't. You won't get away with the trophy there. They're going to have to be a lot better more accurate than they were.
Alan, over the last month, 4 debuts: McCarthy, Prendergast, Izuchukwu and Clarkson. Let's talk in the 10s. Both of them, and Jack Crowley and Sam Prendergast, started a couple of games. And actually, I thought at the weekend they both did pretty well. Sam started and played 60 minutes. Fair enough. And then Jack, to be fair to him, responded, took it to the gain line, looked pretty slick, which is great for him. Where are you in this 10 situation? But I suppose ultimately, no matter who's starting, there's more depth building.
Yeah, it's really important. I think that's the positive. Cormac Izuchukwu, Sam Prendergast, Tom Clarkson, Gus McCarthy, 4 new caps. Jamie Osborne over the summer. So there's 5 guys there that have been capped in recent months, and that's important. We're going to see a lot of these guys. But I would think that as Matt was saying about the negativity and maybe the expectation, that probably is a little bit too high. But expectation is good as well, that you expect it from yourself and stuff like that. And that's what these players have to learn, come into the system. And it is about character as well. Sam Prendergast getting the nod over Jack Crowley, there was a feeling that, there's a bit of a change and a turn happening here. And then for Jack Crowley to come on, finish really positively the way he did and bring what his performance. Both of them will feel good in themselves after the November series. I think Jack Crowley probably would be quite frustrated.
You think Jack will?
Yeah, but I think he'll feel better about himself than probably the week leading into the Australia game, because I think fair. There's a fair bit being said in the press about Sam Prendergast overtaking him, the attack being better with him, all this kind of stuff. It's a little bit unfair, and I've said that a few times. I think if you can harness these two guys to work together and to kind of make each other better and create a kind of a Ward, Campbell, Humphreys, O'Gara, Sexton, O'Gara type scenario, that's better for the team. There's fly halves are hard to come by. We've seen so many iconic number 10s retire in the last number of years, and it just doesn't automatically translate into another superstar arriving or someone who's going to guide your team for 10 years. So we've two guys here and Kieran Frawley, with Johnny Sexton retiring. We've now two guys who you feel, and Frawley as well, who's more of a utility, and that probably comes against him a little bit, but it's a great position to be in. You spoke last week, Matt, about Lolesio and, Australia's issue finding a 10, and Dan Bigger with Wales, he's gone. It's a difficult position to fill because it's so intricate and you want big characters there. Crowley has a real presence about him as regards he's an attitude, he's a physicality, and you feel Sam Prendergast he's that bit of magic dust, and they can complement each other going forward. So Jack Crowley would have been upset and frustrated, absolutely, but I liked his reaction, and that's what I was hoping for. Players get dropped all the time. I lived my whole career, the disappointments of that, and it's difficult at times, and it's who you speak to and who you trust around you that makes you believe, yes, readjust, fix this part of your game, whatever the case may be, and react. This guy reacted in a pretty quick way. He didn't come on sulking. He came on trying to bring energy, and look, I think that's important for him as well. So it actually worked out really well for both 10s in the finish.
Matt, would you agree? Did it work out really well? Also, may as well ask the question, if they're both fit for the next couple of months, let's see their form, but who has the 10 jersey in Dublin against England at the end of January?
Jack Crowley, without doubt.
Without a doubt?
Yeah, without a doubt. I felt really for both the players last week, because I thought the talk about Prendergast having the jersey, doing all this, after one game, you go, wow. It's unhinged. You just got to throw that aside. And because Jack hasn't played, Jack's played really, done a lot of things really well. And I hate saying it again, it's just some of his kicking strategies and the choice of his kicks he needs to work on. But he's done very, very well, and he's just starting to get to the number of games where he's feeling confident. But let's twist this, come back again. Giving Prendergast time was a very good thing, because Prendergast needs to learn. I thought Sam Prendergast line kicking, so in other words, when you get a penalty and you kick for touch, I thought it was absolutely exceptional. I thought it was a phenomenal performance. Some of his kicks gained Ireland 50 and 60 metres. The kicks for the sideline there, at the beginning of the second half, they were superb kicks. And compare that to Lolesio for Australia, who had a pop gun, and we're only going 20 and 30 metres. And that was part of Australia's problem. They couldn't clear their half, even when they got penalties or free kicks. The range of their punting was very small. And I thought Sam did that brilliantly. But as Quinny said, what I loved about Jack coming off the bench, he was absolutely filthy. He wasn't sulking. He was, give me the ball. I'm taking these buggers on. I'm here. This is my jersey. I'm here to prove it. I love that. I thought after 3 games where our bench had done very little, Craig Casey and Crowley, wow, you could just see the game changed gear. And for the first time in a long time, Ireland scored a try in the last 20 minutes. And they've kicked goals, but they haven't scored a try. I want to say 8 games. I just haven't got that stat in front of me. Either way, it's been a long time since they've scored a number of points in the second half, and they are the lowest of the top 8 teams from the points they score in the last 20. The points scored in the last 20 minutes. So the bench did a very good job that way. I thought the forwards that came on also did a good job. And young Gus McCarthy, he's got the highest try-scoring ratio of any forward in Irish history. He's been phenomenal. He's been sitting there. How long's this been going?
The best month of his life, Matt. Best couple of months of his life.
And I think the whole November's been a bit like this. Do you think that some of the comments have been pretty outlandish, and we need a bit of, some grown-ups talking in the house. But the depth that Ireland is producing in the 10 is very important. You've got to play for the present, but you still got to have an eye on the future. And I think the selectors have done that. That's been disappointing for Frawley and Crowley, but that's the nature of the business. But that changes with England at home on the first game. You pick the best 23 in the nation for that game. And if you're doing that, Crowley starts, for me, Prendergast is on the bench. And then you either, depending on who the centres are, do you play the 3, which combination is it, the 3 centres? Do you have a centre on the bench, or do you have Frawley, or do you have Osborne? And that starts coming down to some really nice decisions, because they're tough decisions for the selectors. But without building that depth, which Australia have not done, we saw, just spare a thought for Tane Edmund, the Australian young number 10, who I was saying is a very, very good attacking 10, comes on, gets a couple of seconds and gets a head knock and has to go off. The poor kid, I felt so sorry for him. But that also tells you how we've improved with reacting to people with head knocks. He did not want to come off that field. You'd see him saying, no, I'm not coming. And my heart was breaking for him. He's a local kid. He comes from the area where I come in Sydney. But no, they did the right thing and brought him up. So he gets his cap after about 45 seconds, the poor kid. That's all he lasted. But again, if you compare that situation where Ireland now have these options after the Sexton era ends, and Australia is still desperately trying to find something, Ireland are in a far more powerful position than Australia, for sure.
Alan, talk to us about the Irish lineout. You probably don't want to speak on it, but we will. 4 or 5 lineouts lost. What is going on? Yes, there's so much, I'm sure, that goes involved, the thrower, the lifter, the jumper. I don't know, just saying key lineout words there, Alan. But just in general, would you be slightly worried this has been a trend for the guts of a year or even longer now?
Yeah, I would.
How do you fix it?
They just got to keep working on it, try and get some confidence back there. Execution. There's a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of stuff goes on with lineouts.
Haven't you overcomplicated though?
It's not. I don't think they're overcomplicating it. They're getting picked off by opposition, and we're not challenging it really the way I'd like on opposition lineouts.
What would you like to see them do?
I'd like to see them get more bodies in the air themselves and start pinching a few lineouts from the opposition. And look, someone can pick that up again and say, if you go back in the stats, it's just the attack against New Zealand, a lot of the ball was won at the front of the lineout. Again, there was a number of lineouts that were lost. 4 lineouts lost against Fiji. That's too much for me. I'm just trying to get the New Zealand ones here.
I think it was 5 lost.
Yeah, I think it was 5 from memory.
Yeah.
I think one may have come back to the Irish.
It's saying 3 lineouts lost here in my stats, but there was a couple slapped down. There was So it's 3 or 4 or 5 in games that it's frustrating. I guarantee you this is frustrating the forwards coach Paul O'Connell himself. The personnel sometimes. You heard me use that term, good lineout operator. A natural ability to read a lineout isn't about being 6'10" as opposed to 6'3". It's about understanding the lineout inside out, being a real kind of student of the lineout and being really diligent in everything about it, and maybe having a natural ability to read and where to call, where it should be called. And I've said this many times before, it's not about me and I could go in and fix the lineout. And if I was there as a player, it's not that. It's just, I remember you get to a level where you're comfortable with the call, but you want every other player standing in that lineout nearly knowing where you're going to call it before you call it. So I know in the modern game, there's a lot of preemptive calls. So they make the call in a huddle, and then they have the get out call. If they'll make a call, and if that has been marked, or if the lineout caller thinks it's been marked, he has a buzzword then to a get out of jail call. There's a bit of, it works really well if everyone's in sync and everyone is tuned in, but there's people who are not tuned in to what's happening, and they're missing lifts. The throws can be sloppy. There's sometimes you have to compliment the opposition, that you come up against really good defensive lineout operators who pick off a couple of lineouts. It happens. It's very hard to get 100% all the time, but that should be and it is the target for everyone. But how many lineouts did Australia lose on Saturday?
Haven't seen the stats, Al. They lost a couple.
How many would you think?
Yeah, they lost. I would have thought
there actually wouldn't be that much difference, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, they won 0.
0. 9 from 9.
Did they not throw one straight?
Were they all clean though, Al?
Yeah, they won. Well, look, that's the stats. That's what the stats say. I'm not saying that happens. I'm saying it's rare that anybody gets a full house. I just look at New Zealand, the first one. Their lineouts were very, very good. They lost one. So look, you're always going to have one or two. If you can go in afterwards as a lineout caller or someone who's a jumper and you have 100%, it's a great stat to have. So look, it's sometimes it's very hard to achieve that. But I think, again, there's a couple of these lineouts that you can pick that poor lift, poor call, and poor application. So, it's hard, and Paul will take some of that on the chin himself, but some of it is down to the personnel. Alan Wynne-Jones, Victor Matfield, Paul O'Connell, Steve Bortwick, Mick O'Driscoll. There's a few more. There's a common theme. There's a common theme with all these guys. They're line-out experts, and they're on the field making that call. I don't think
as Peter Manny starts. I know he probably not.
But Peter was never a line-out caller. Peter's a line-out stealer, lifter, takes ball. His athleticism in the air is phenomenal, and he's very, very good at reading defensive lineouts, Peter. But he's never standing out making the calls. It doesn't happen. So look, sometimes it's when you have one of those guys in a team, they run that lineout really well, because it's difficult for the coach doesn't send out the call to the lineout. The lineout caller has to make that read on the field and decide where he's going to call it in the lineout. So we're lacking that, and that's a reality. We're lacking one of those guys who's just a real diligent, brilliant lineout caller, and it affects when you go to the top level. If you come up from provincial up to international, it gets more challenging. South Africa picked 4 or 5 lineouts off us last year in the World Cup. We still won that game, but in an ideal world, that one lineout you just need to take to launch your attack or secure the game or whatever. There's a nervousness about our lineout, and so look, they've just got to keep working on it. Get together, look at the calling system. But the one area that Ireland improved dramatically, which won them the game at the weekend, and it's the most obvious one, is their discipline was so much better against Australia. If they gave away some of the penalties that they gave away against New Zealand and Argentina, they would have lost that game. So they won by 3 points, but they gave away 9 penalties in the game, technically. But I'd say 5 or 6 of them were from turnovers. So you can, that's not bad discipline. No. McWright was outstanding. He got 4 or 5 clean turnovers. So there's 4 or 5 penalties that he won. So then when you're looking at Ireland, you're saying there are 3 or 4 penalties in the game. Do you know what I mean? When you take 4 or 5 of those turnovers. So that's why they won. One of the reasons why they won the game. The other reason was the missed tackle count went dramatically down. They missed 30 against New Zealand, 30 against Argentina. Sorry, 30 against New Zealand, 31 against Argentina, 14 against Fiji, and 18 against Australia. So again, it's something that's, you can't avoid missed tackles. You're going to have them, but they're the two reasons. And the other one was the lineup, I was just spoken about. So look, I don't want to be overcritical. I think it's not. Is it a coaching thing? Is it a poor calling from people? When you peel this back, sometimes it's down to the brass tacks of having real natural line-out callers and people. So do you understand what I mean? So if you're a prop at the back of the line or the front of the line, I'm walking in to make the call, I want you to be so diligent that you nearly know where the space is here. If it's not a pre-call, of course, if it's not a pre-call. So I just remember playing with Paul O'Connell for so long, and that's what he was like, and that's what you have to know your role inside out. And look, he's trying to beat the drum with these players, and it's not always sinking in perfectly. The difference with where you win the line out in a game, and again, Matt will relate to this. If you want to launch good attack with your midfield or your wingers or bring guys in off the wing, the best place to win that is from the middle to the tail of the line out, because it's harder for the defensive line to get off get up ahead of speed. If you're winning at the front of the line out and that pass is in the air for 2-3 seconds, it's so much easier for defensive line to get up. So you analyse Ireland, you play against Ireland now, go after their breakdown, make them throw to the front of the line out, and just swarm, get bodies everywhere in the midfield and stay connected. There's your template. So the challenge now is to try and figure that out. And teams evolve and things change. So I think that's the challenge for the coaches now. And look, I think they've been brilliant, and I think to get 3 out of 4 is a really positive result. But you have to look at these things, and I think they'll look at the stats. The other stat that you know, again, can be lost, and is post-contact meters. 177 against New Zealand. So that's making the contact and getting the fight, winning the fight. We were in the mid 300s for the other 3 games. So actually, Ireland, if they could hold on to the ball for long enough, they're winning lots of post-contact meters. So the problem is it's breaking down too early.
The lead up, sorry, Al, on that, the lead up to Josh Van der Fleur's try, I think Jay McCarthy took the ball, hit the Australian line. He took another 8 or 9 metres before he hit the deck. And that just ruined the Australian defensive system. They were beaten by that point before Josh tried. Your point's right. I disagree with you on one little thing, mate, and I know we all respect Paul O'Connell, and everything you said is right. The players on the field, that they're in charge. Paul doesn't miss a lift. No, of course. Paul doesn't miss a throw. That's it. But I do think exactly what you said, that his opponent this week was Jeff Parling. They were the 2 second row partners on the 2013 tour. To give everyone at home a little bit of an insight, I know the Wallabies knew that when Parling called the ball, it came in about 4 seconds, and when Paul called the line out, it came in at about 8 seconds. So the Wallabies were counting that off before they went. That's how much analysis goes in to the line out. It's just, you know, as Alan said, they're geeks. They're just line out geeks. But you've got to have what wins line out: speed of thinking, speed of movement. Because you've got to get to the space fast. You've got to think, where's the space? Get there fast. And we're just not doing that. So, that's easy for me to say out here, and it is. But they've got to speed their thinking up, and they've got to speed their movement up to get to the space. Then it comes down to how you deliver. But if you don't have speed of thinking and speed of movement, you're not going to do it. And that's Paul's challenge. Now, a lot of that sits with the players. I'm not blaming Paul, but as a coach, that's the challenge that he's got to get these guys to. At the beginning, Ireland were doing that magnificently. Give you another example on Saturday. The first 3 Australian lineouts, enter, throw, jump. They didn't wait at all, and they won the first 3. Ireland adjusted. Then you've got to come into it. But I think that was a good example by Parling How do we change the speed of things? What are we doing with this? So I think it's too much to give an answer here now that we'd be boring the socks off everyone. But I think that's Paul's challenge in a nutshell, because the other teams, especially the good line-out teams, are rooting it.
Well, let's hope it improves for the Six Nations. Matt, Andy Farrell's moving on. He said he's not going anywhere. He still lives in Sandymount in the press conference, but he goes to the Lions. Simon Easterby comes in as a top man, the head honcho. Do you think he'll change much? He won't have that much time to work with the players. You know, he might have 2 weeks before the start of the Six Nations because they're now back at their clubs playing in the ERC in Europe. But he'll want to make his own stamp or put his own stamp on things. Where could you see him changing things? Will it be mostly on that attack, or do you think something different?
First thing a coach, or the major thing a coach can do to influence a game is his selections. So I think that's the very first point of call. What selections will he make in this side? Now, let's assume Todd Furlong is available. He is going to have a decision about does he keep Byrne at 6, or does he move him into the second row? Then what happens to the bench? Which of the centres do I put in? What is the combination of which 10 do I choose? Which one do I have on my bench? Does Craig Casey come onto the bench in front of Connor Murray? He has a lot of decisions to make around the actual makeup of that 23. Does McCarthy stay? I think he's got to. Does he push Herring out? What happens? Okay, if Finley Bealham comes back to the bench, what happens there? Is there a conversation to be had about Henderson? That is his biggest influence he's going to have in that first game. Second part, I would say, is does he start adjusting the attack? Because our skill level, as Alan rightly pointed out, has deteriorated. You know, I'm not in the camp, Al's not in the camp. We can't tell you why the skills have deteriorated, because it has been a highly skillful side, but they have. So the passing has not been as accurate. Everyone says you've got to get rid of the multi-phase game. Well, what's the alternative? You just kick on the first tackle? I hear that and go, we can't play the multi-phase game. Okay, we're going to play like South Africa and the Lions in 2019. Kick the leather off, or 2020, whatever it was. Kick the leather off the ball and don't pass it. That's rubbish. So he has to get their skill level back up to where it was before, and there has to be some adjustments in how they're playing based around who he picks at 10. So therefore we come back to the selection. Now, I think November was a time.
Matt, sorry to butt in there. You know, when you're head coach and your assistants and you've been involved before, they're obviously all not meeting together, who Fogarty, Easterby, Farrell beforehand, November, Goodman. And they all, I presume, I'm just guessing here or speaking out of turn, they all have their parts where they speak why someone should start, but then Andy Farrell has the overall call. Is that how it works to play to anyone that's listening in? And now Easterby will step up and make that final call.
Yeah, I you will. I don't know how the system that they do it there, but in most parts, it's a collaboration. You don't have selectors anymore. You have assistant coaches and the head coach. And if there's a disagreement, the head coach has the final say. You know, he'll either go with his assistant, say, "Listen, go with me on this one," and that's going to be a considerable process. And usually, what the coaches do is every week they meet and say, "What's our team? What's our team? How are we going to play? And that how is that team?" The tactics we're going to try and implement to beat our opponents this week. So, for example, you know, I like Todd Byrne at 6. I always have liked him at 6. And they first went there for South Africa because they needed a bigger pack. Do they continue with that? Will that be what's required in the second match at Murrayfield? Scotland are going to pose a big challenge. So you've got all those issues. But again, if we come back to our conversation at the beginning, a lot of Ireland's problems were they were beating themselves. So he has to eliminate those problems. As Al said, get rid of the penalties, drop your error rate there, fix your line out up. So if he can get those things happening, that allows Ireland to play. And obviously the missed tackles and so on, all that. But that was also contributed to, in my opinion, by their selection process. So I think getting that right, fixing your own errors, don't beat yourself. If this Ireland team's not beating itself, they're a very, very hard team to put away. But in the last few weeks, that's what we've seen. So he's going to be totally focused on getting that team to perform the way they have in the past to a higher standard. I'm not one that's saying, look, we throw all the baby out with the bathwater here. That to me is counterproductive. Let's just build up. If we look at what South Africa are doing, who are without doubt the best team in the world after this November series, they've maintained their standards of a good kicking game, a good mauling game, a great defensive game. What have they added? They've added a bit of width to it through Tony Brown's coaching. So they haven't dropped their standards. They've added another level. That's what Ireland have got to do. But Ireland have dropped their standards. So they've got to get them back to where they were before they can move them forward.
Alan, 3 out of 4, which is, we can't forget that. That's 3 wins out of 4. As we break it down, that's just the stat and the fact. But we're always looking at, in inverted commas, 80-minute performance, which never comes, but it's close to that. They haven't had that now in, 4 weeks, 4 matches? Does it, the further you get away from that, does that give you more concern going into England on the Six Nations?
Yeah, it gives a bit of concern for sure. And there's something...
Like, is this Ireland team peaked is what I'm getting at. I'm basically asking that.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how they react. Everyone has little dips in time and form. I thought you get we were hoping for what happened in South Africa. I think the first half performance in that second test in South Africa that reminded me of the matches in New Zealand 2 seasons previous, the summer tour. That was the height of this team, really.
They're unbelievable. That 40 minutes.
They were phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even New Zealand, the first half in Wellington in that third test was just exceptional stuff. It was phenomenal against New Zealand 2022. The first half in Durban was outstanding. The energy, the accuracy, the shape, the stuff we're talking about. Their lineup was good. Their scrum was good. Breakdown exceptional. So we were hoping for, and they lost the game the week before in the first test, which we were kind of saying was it down to a little bit of rust. Being in Pretoria, South Africa being so good. They had moments in that game for sure, but they were chasing it all the time. And in the end, in the second test, they're fortunate with the drop goals. South Africa came right back at them in the second half. So we were kind of hoping for something like that after New Zealand, that have a really strong, dominant performance. It's hard to get that 80 minutes, but when a team finishes well and they're the ones hanging on against Argentina at the end of the game, that just kind of gives it puts a little bit of a different slant on it. So they've got to readjust themselves, I think, and maybe there's a little bit of a transition that's needed with some of the young players that we mentioned that could come in, because the first thing you go straight to is and it happens, and whether the players like it or not, if you have performances that are not like what we've seen, the age profile starts to come into it, and you've got to live with that. I remember being in an aging Munster team in 2009, and Stuart Barnes, the headline on the Sunday Times was, "We were Dad's Army going to Perpignan for."
Were you Dad's Army?
No, well, we went and we scored 5 tries away in Perpignan, and we got a bonus point win, and we were outstanding. So we blew them off the field in that game. So that's
experience them.
Well, yeah, but look, all good teams and all players. It changes, doesn't it, when you get into your 30s? Not the same for everybody. Some people can go on longer than others. So there's still lots of rugby in these players. They haven't become bad players overnight. What's happened here is everybody else now has been trying their best. How do we stop this Ireland team? How do we change the narrative? How do we unsettle them? And how do we beat them? And they're finding little chinks in the armour, because I think Ireland have come to a point now where they need to change their game a little bit. The New Zealand coach said it last year. It was copy and paste in the attack in that quarter final, didn't they? Ian Foster after the game. So, Joe Schmidt, he got his defence right the other day, and it nearly came right for him. Australia didn't really have huge sustained pressure on Ireland. They got one try from Jorgensen. It was a very good try, but Ireland weren't hanging on for periods of the game last week. They was just in the wrong areas of the field for Ireland, and it just kept breaking down. Lalacia kicking his few penalties, got them in a good position. So, you know, it's there's certainly still some great players in this team, and the challenge now is just reinvigorate it a little bit, and that might be personnel tweaks, but it also, I think it has to happen, and Matt said it, in tactical tweaks, in coming up with new ways, whether that is more crossfield kicks, whether it's more territorial kicks, just varying the game a little bit.
Matt, a last one on this to Australia. 2 out of 4, but certainly more positives. Do you think by, what are we saying, July or June, is it, in Brisbane first test next year? They'll actually, certainly a lot more, they'll give a lot more account of themselves than we maybe thought 6 months ago. You know, I think this could actually be an all right test series, or is that me being too optimistic?
No, it's not, Stu. It's the problem for Australia is they lost a year when they sacked Dave Rennie and put Eddie Jones in, because all that build-up that Dave had done, which was excellent. We remember 2 years ago, Australia had drawn with France and in a cracker of a game, and almost beat Ireland again. Ross Byrne kicked a penalty from the last few minutes to win the game. Then from that point where they started to build up again, they just fell off a cliff because Eddie, basically changed the team, changed his coaching staff. They've just got it back. Look, this tour has been very good for them because they had a disastrous home series. Like the championship was a train smash, a real train smash for them. Biggest loss in their history, one win. It was just awful. And the win at Twickenham really changed everything. They've beaten Wales 3 times, but we've got to say, look, that's where Wales are. Another win, wow, that would have been doing something. But it's given them some hope. They're very tired. It's been a 10-month season for these players, and they're at the end of their rope. But I think it has made the Lions series, like there was a lot of English people saying, oh, let's not go to Australia, let's go to South Africa. You've got to put up with those idiots. But that's life. But now that series is really going to be alive. And there's still a few players out. Remember that Australia was playing with number 3 and 4 hooker. You've got two hookers to come back in. You've probably got a couple of other options around the team to come back in as well, as far as depth if someone gets hurt around the front row and the second row. So that's not bad. There's a few guys in Japan who weren't available. Korobidi for one, who didn't tour here. So if all those guys are available, they'll put out a pretty reasonable 23. Whether that's enough to win a series is yet to be seen. But they'll be competitive and compelling. And that will make it a good series, I think. The other part, and I really mean this, Australia are not going to play crap rugby like the Lions and South Africa did. And that was a disaster tour for rugby. This will be, even if the Lions come down and get away with it, this will be an open tour. Andy Farrell will play good rugby, and Schmidt will be forced to play good rugby because the Australian public won't have him if they do. And remember he's only contracted up to the Lions.
They want him to stay to the World Cup, don't they? At least, man, is that right?
Well, that's to be confirmed. That's
okay.
Personally, I think he should.
And are the public not very much behind him?
I don't think the Australian public are very sceptical of it because of the long relationship or poor relationship with New Zealand rugby. New Zealand coaches and administrators coming into Australia that haven't done a particularly good job. Dave Rennie did a good job. He's a New Zealander. So I don't believe, you shouldn't do that as far as just labelling someone, he's a Kiwi, he can't do the job. That's why I supported Joe Schmidt for the job, because I don't think that's right. But you're asking me what the general public are thinking. The jury's out as far as the Australian general public goes. Everywhere I go, people ask me about him, and I say good things about Joe because I thought he did a great job for Leinster and for Ireland. But he lost his way in 2019, which I say to people. But generally, he was a good coach. first thing he did was bring Laurie Fisher back in. I thought that was a huge move. So, but he is not contracted past that, and that I think how the Lions go will determine whether he stays on or they move on.
Well, Mark, we seem to have lost Alan. He mustn't have paid his Wi-Fi bill. But we'll finish just with a word on Ireland. Out of 10, what would you rate the autumn?
Oh, probably a 7, Stu. You know, we keep saying they won 3 games. They beat the Pumas, the Wallabies, and Fiji.
So is the criticism just a bit much for you?
No, because I was thinking
it's legitimate and it's fair.
Yeah, it is because this is
so high, and that's what they've done because they've won so many games.
Yeah, it was true. Remember, this is a team who aspired to win the World Cup a year ago. You know, and they could have. Like the margins were minuscule. We talked about losing that quarterfinal. Geordie Barrett's now playing for Leinster. He doesn't stick his hand under the ball when Kelleher goes over. Ireland go through to the semi. You know, the margins at that last World Cup were just minuscule. We saw it again on Saturday when Wright touched the ball as his foot, 2 centimetres before his foot touches the line. If it goes the other way, Ireland don't get that line out that leads to them scoring the winning try. So, no, and here's the next part, Stu. Ireland were the hunter rather. They're now the hunted. People are coming after Ireland because they perceive them as a great team. So England are going to turn up here pretty much as underdogs because they're 1 and 3. They're going to be hunting for Ireland. Scotland are going for them. France are coming for them. Like, it is a different mindset they have to deal with. And that's a self-inflicted injury because they've played so well in the past. And they have set their own standards. The Irish rugby public expects it from them, and they expect it from themselves. So 3 out of 4 is a pass mark, but it's not at the standards they know they can reach or that we believe they should have.
And finally, I'll ask you this probably 15 to 20 times between January and the end of March. But Ireland, will they win the Six Nations, Matt? Sure, why not?
First week's a big week. If I had to put money on someone now,
so they could come first or third, is what you're saying.
Yeah. That's
it's not tight, yeah.
France have England away, which is always tough for the French. But you've got to say who was the best home side, the best northern team over the autumn series. You have to say it was France. They played that New Zealand game was just an absolute cracker of a game. So France at home in the second last round, I think will determine who wins it.
Alan, can you hear us or not?
I think he's out with the his
internet.
He's obviously not with Virgin Wi-Fi.
Of course he is, Matt. We'll leave it at that, Matt. It's been a pleasure. It's been a great November with you and Alan, and we'll be back in January. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Stu. Bye, everyone.